to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
There's several, actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs that are out there of extraterrestrial origin.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. But the surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. I'm at the foot of the ladder. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Right. Hi everyone, I hope you're all well and thanks for joining me again. Hope everyone's good and fine and all the rest of it. And in this show today, I'm going to be talking to you all about what happened to Adolf Hitler in the last days of World War II and after. Now, it's a subject I know will provoke a lot of emotions and maybe upset a few people. And if it does, I would like to apologise. But I guarantee you I've not set out to upset anyone, but the subject matter is very disturbing and looks at a very disturbing and dark time in our beautiful planet's history. For me, this story is a fascinating story, and as usual, it's only my opinion, and I also believe that the world is not as cut and dried as the world's power brokers would have us believe. Now, as I've already mentioned, tonight we'll be discussing what happened to Adolf Hitler towards the end of World War II. And the subjects that we'll cover are in this menu here. So just give me a sec. So basically we're going to be covering who was Adolf Hitler, how he came to power, how Britain and France declared war on Germany, the mainstream theory about Hitler and Eva Braun and what happened to them, the alternative theories about what happened to Hitler starting to appear, Stalin, Soviet Union and their role in the rise of these alternative theories. Where could have Hitler escaped to if he did escape? What help could they have received to escape Berlin? And reactions to these alternative theories. And then I will give you my thoughts on the matter. So there we are. That's what we're going to be looking at. So let's look at the first one of these. And we're going to look at who was Adolf Hitler. So he was the leader of Nazi Germany between 1933 and 1945. Hitler and the Nazi regime were responsible for the deliberate killing of an estimated 19.3 million civilians and prisoners of war. In addition, 28.7 million soldiers and civilians died as a result of military action in Europe. The number of civilians killed during World War II was unprecedented in warfare, and the casualties constitute the deadliest conflict in history. The historian and biographer Ian Kershaw describes Hitler as the embodiment of modern political evil. And under Hitler's leadership and racist ideology, the Nazi regime was responsible for the genocide of the estimated 6 million Jews and millions of other victims, whom he and his followers deemed unto-mention, subhumans, or socially undesirable. So Adolf Hitler was born on the 20th of April, 1889 in Braun in a town which is now in Austria, close to the border with the German Empire. He was the fourth of 6 children born to Elias Hitler and his third wife, Clara Polsey. And Adolf Hitler's father, Alois Hitler, changed his family name from Schicklgruber to Hitler on the 7th of January 1877, just under 12 years before the birth of his son Adolf. 3 of Hitler's siblings, Gustav, Ida, and Otto, all died in infancy. When Hitler was 3, the family moved to Passau in Germany, which is where they acquired their distinctive Lower Bavarian dialect rather than Austrian German, which marked his speech throughout his life. After the family moved to Hafeld in 1895, this coincided with the onset of intense father-son conflicts, caused, it is believed, by Hitler's refusal to conform to the strict discipline of his school. In 1900, Hitler's younger brother Edmund died from measles, something which deeply affected him, and he changed from being a confident, outgoing, conscientious student to a miserable, bad-tempered and detached boy who constantly fought with his father and teachers. Paula Hitler, Adolf's younger sister, recalled how Adolf was a teenage bully who would often slap her. Like many Austrian Germans, Hitler began to develop German nationalistic ideas from a young age. He expressed loyalty only to Germany, despising the declining Habsburg monarchy and its rule over an ethnically diverse empire. Hitler and his friends used the greeting Heil and sang the Deutschlandlied instead of the Austrian imperial anthem. By the time Hitler was aged 18 in 1907, he had lost both his parents. His father died suddenly in January 1903, and his mother from breast cancer, aged 47, on the 21st of December 1907, and he was now living in Vienna in Austria. In 1909, Hitler ran out of money and was forced to live a bohemian life in homeless shelters and a men's dormitory on Mendelmannstrasse 27 in the Brigittenau district of Vienna. He earned money as a casual labourer and by painting and selling watercolours of Vienna's sights. Hitler was first exposed to racist rhetoric in Vienna. Populists such as Mayor Karl Lueger exploited the city's prevalent anti-Semitic sentiment, and in the Mariahilf district where Hitler lived was an area where views of German nationalism were even more widespread, and Hitler also developed anti-Slavic sentiments during his time living in Austria, as well as through reading literature that promoted prejudice and xenophobic ideas. It is alleged that Hitler states in his book Mein Kampf that he first became an anti-Semite in Vienna. In August 1914, at the outbreak of World War I, Hitler was living in Munich and he voluntarily enlisted in the Bavarian army. Hitler described his role in World War I as the greatest of all experiences, and his wartime experience reinforced his German patriotism, and he was shocked by Germany's capitulation in November 1918, and this then went on to shape his ideology. Like other German nationalists, he believed the Dolchstoßlegende, stab in the back myth, which claimed that the German army, undefeated in the field, had been stabbed in the back on the home front by civilian leaders, Jews, Marxists, and those who signed the armistice that ended the fighting, later dubbed the November Criminals. The Treaty of Versailles stipulated that Germany had to relinquish several of its territories and demilitarize the Rhineland and imposed economic sanctions and levied heavy reparations on the country. Many Germans saw the treaty as an unjust humiliation. They especially objected to Article 231, which they interpreted as declaring Germany responsible for the war. The Versailles Treaty and the economic, social, and political conditions in Germany after the war were later exploited by Hitler for political gain. After World War I, Hitler returned to Munich, and because of his lack of career prospects and formal education, he stayed in the army. In July 1919, he was appointed Verbindungsmann, intelligence agent of an Aufklärungskommando reconnaissance unit of the Reichswehr, assigned to influence other soldiers and infiltrate the German Workers' Party, the DAP. Hitler came into contact with Anton Drexler, the party chairman of the DAP, who was impressed by Hitler's oratorical skills, and he gave Hitler a copy of his pamphlet, My Political Awakening, which contained anti-Semitic, nationalist, anti-capitalist, and anti-Marxist ideas. On the orders of his army superiors, Hitler applied to join the party and within a week was accepted as a party member. At the DAP, Hitler met Dietrich Eckart, one of the party's founders, who became Hitler's mentor, exchanging ideas with him and introducing him to a wide range of Munich society. To increase its appeal, the DAP changed its name to the National Sozialistische Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, better known as the Nazi Party. Hitler was responsible for the designing of the party's banner of a swastika in a white circle on a red background. In 1921, he was appointed leader of the Nazi Party, and then in 1923, he attempted to seize government power in a failed coup in Munich and was sentenced to 5 years in prison, serving just over a year of his sentence. While there, he dictated the first volume of his autobiography and political manifesto, Mein Kampf, in English, My Struggle. After his early release in 1924, Hitler gained popular support by attacking the Treaty of Versailles and promoting pan-Germanism, anti-Semitism, and anti-communism, with charismatic, skillful, and effective public speaking, coupled with the promotion of Nazi propaganda. He frequently denounced communism as being part of an international Jewish conspiracy. He then rose to power as the leader of the Nazi Party, becoming the Chancellor in 1933 and then taking the title of Führer and Reichskanzler in 1934. And then Hitler had a strong desire for Lebensraum, literally living space for the German people in Eastern Europe, and his aggressive expansionist foreign policy is considered the primary cause of World War II in Europe. During his dictatorship, he directed large-scale rearmament, and he initiated the European theatre of World War II by invading Poland on the 1st of September 1939, which resulted in Britain and France declaring war on Germany. And then in June 1941, Hitler ordered an invasion of the Soviet Union. In December 1941, he declared war on the United States. By the end of 1941, German forces and their allies, known as the European Axis powers, originally Nazi Germany and the Kingdom of Italy, occupied most of Europe and North America. These gains were gradually reversed after 1941, and in 1945 the Allied armies defeated Nazi Germany's army. He was closely involved in military operations throughout the war and was central to the perpetration of the Holocaust, the genocide of about 6 million Jews and millions of other victims. It is alleged that on the 29th of April 1945, he married his long-term partner Eva Braun in the Führer bunker in Berlin, and then on the following day, the couple committed suicide by gunshot to avoid capture by the Soviet Red Army. In accordance with Hitler's wishes, their corpses were burned. This version of events regarding Hitler's death have been called into question, and this will be the main focus of this show. There are many theories which claim that Adolf Hitler did not commit suicide inside the Führer bunker in Berlin with his wife Eva Braun on the 30th of April 1945 to avoid capture by the advancing forces of the Soviet Union. And in the archives of Britain's MI5, there is interesting information regarding what the British government believe happened during Adolf Hitler's last days, which reflects closely the mainstream version of events. Hitler's will and marriage. Hitler retreated to the bunker in January 1945 as the Soviets advanced across Poland towards eastern Germany, and the Allied air forces devastated Berlin with bombing raids. By the middle of April 1945, 2.5 million Soviet soldiers had reached the center of the German capital and were fighting within only a few hundred yards of the Führer bunker, Hitler's refuge. It has also been claimed by other sources that all Hitler's escape routes have been cut off by the Americans, and all of this, along with the realization that all was lost and not wanting to suffer the same fate as Mussolini had, he agreed with his partner Eva Braun that they would commit suicide in the Führer bunker and made arrangements for their bodies to be disposed of so that the Soviet forces would not be able to get their hands on them, either alive or dead. But even within mainstream sources, there are discrepancies with regards to how it is alleged Hitler and Eva Braun committed suicide. Some say that Hitler took a suicide pill, and some claim that he died from a self-inflicted gunshot to the temple. Allegedly, Hitler had left written and verbal instructions regarding how their bodies should be disposed of, which was that bodies should be taken to the Reichs-Chancellery garden and then doused in petrol and burned. So this is my YouTube channel, Warren's Mysterious World. It was previously called Unveiling Realities, but I decided to change it because I thought the name was a bit ambiguous. And I think this one's a lot clearer about what the channel's all about. Basically, this is where I talk about conspiracy theories, the unexplained, and the such. So please make sure you subscribe to the channel. On the screen there, you can see my different social media platforms that I use. There's YouTube, Instagram, X, and TikTok. So you'll be able to see me there. Also, please make sure you subscribe to my football and sport related Warren's Team Talk channel. Every Saturday, I do a show where I keep you up to date with all the scores in the 3 o'clock kickoff and what's going on in these games. So that starts at 2:30. So if that's your bag, please feel free to come and join me. So anyway, moving on, it is claimed that in the small hours of the 28th to the 29th of April, Hitler dictated his will to Gertrude Traud Junge, who was one of his secretaries, and then soon afterwards, Hitler and Eva Braun were married in the map room of the Führer bunker, where they were accompanied by Goebbels, his wife Magda, Hitler's private secretary Martin Bormann, and Hitler's personal secretary Gerda Christian. After the wedding party followed to celebrate the occasion, according to Christian, Hitler admitted to her that he knew the war was lost, and apparently he told her that he would rather shoot himself than allow himself to be taken prisoner by the Soviets. On the morning of the 29th of April, Hitler learnt of the execution of Mussolini and his mistress Claretta Petacci, and apparently this reinforced Hitler's determination that neither he nor Eva Braun should face this fate. And then Hitler ordered his staff to prepare for the end. And in the afternoon, Hitler went from room to room, shaking hands with all but his immediate staff, saying a few words of encouragement and thanking everyone. By the morning of the 30th of April, Soviet forces had reached the nearby Potsdamer Platz, and the sounds of battle were all around. One version on record suggests that Eva was overheard crying, "I'd rather die here. I do not want to escape." She and Hitler later emerged from their suite, their personal staff having been assembled, and went around the room shaking hands silently. Everyone knew the time had come. Hitler took Eva back into their rooms for the last time. During the afternoon, Hitler shot himself and Eva took the poison capsule that he had given her. Soon afterwards, their bodies were carried up the stairs to a small garden that's outside the door to the bunker complex, and they were placed next to each other on the ground. Allegedly, there was a small group of people, including Joseph Goebbels and Martin Bormann, gathered beside the bodies. One of them poured petrol from a can over the bodies. They then retired to the safety of a doorway with the sound of Soviet artillery all around them. Hitler's assistant lit a petrol-soaked rag and threw it onto the bodies, which immediately burst into flames. The group made the Nazi salute and withdrew. The bodies were only partly destroyed by the fire and were later hastily buried in a shallow bomb crater. According to Soviet reports, the bodies were exhumed by Soviet troops and taken to Magdeburg in East Germany, where Hitler's body was said to have been finally destroyed in April 1970 by the KGB. It has been claimed 2 fragments of the body, a jawbone, skull, and dental remains, were extracted from the soil in the garden and were preserved. Allegedly, the dental remains that were recovered were matched with Hitler's in May 1945, and they were along with the skull and jawbone displayed in an exhibition at the Soviet Federal Archives in Moscow in April 2000. And it is this skull which is claimed that is that of a woman. So the news of Hitler's death was then announced on German radio on the 1st of May 1945. Following extensive review, West Germany issued a death certificate for Adolf Hitler in 1956. However, alternative theories about the death of Adolf Hitler, which contradict the belief that he committed suicide in the Führer bunker on the 30th of April 1945, still remain. So how do all of these alternative theories take hold and gain legs? It is believed that the idea that Hitler did not commit suicide but instead escaped Berlin was first presented to the general public by Marshal Georgy Zhukov at a press conference on the 9th of June 1945 on orders from Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. In June 1945, 68% of Americans polled thought that Hitler was still alive. However, some mainstream historians and scientists have claimed that the theories about Hitler not having committed suicide in the Führer bunker are disproven fringe theories because of alleged dental records that were allegedly recovered, which he claims match Hitler's, and also because of eyewitness accounts. Then, in July 1945, British newspapers repeated comments from a Soviet officer that a child body discovered by the Soviets was a very poor double. So if these reports originating from the Soviet officer regarding the child body that had been discovered being a very poor double were true, then this also means that the claims that the skull that had been discovered was Hitler's were also false, as were the claims made regarding the dental records, matching those found at the Führer bunker. In addition, in 2009, there was a revelation that a skull in the Soviet archives, which had long been claimed to be Hitler's, as it had a bullet hole in it, was taken by Soviet soldiers from the Führer bunker, actually belonged to a woman. This caused a lot of questions to be asked about what had actually happened to Adolf Hitler at the end of World War II, and this led to a number of alternative theories regarding Hitler's death to come out. Now, clearly, just because a skull which the Soviets claimed to belong to Adolf Hitler is actually that of a woman, does not necessarily mean that he escaped World War II Berlin for a safe haven overseas. But neither does it mean that he did not escape. But if it is true that Soviet troops recovered a skull which they believed was Adolf Hitler's, and it later turned out that the skull was that of a woman, this does for me raise serious questions about what actually happened to Hitler at the end of World War II. American newspapers also repeated quotes such as that of the Soviet garrison commandant of Berlin, who claimed that Hitler had gone into hiding somewhere in Europe. It has been claimed by the mainstream that reports that Hitler had escaped Berlin was Stalin's Soviet government disinformation, which has been claimed was a springboard for various alternative theories. Despite the official conclusion by the Western powers and the consensus of historians that Hitler killed himself on the 30th of April 1945. Stalin's Soviet Union was believed to be no stranger to using disinformation of this type to cause confusion, and also part of their psychological warfare tactics that they used against the West. One such example of this is the Roswell incident, which one theory suggests was perpetrated by the Soviets to cause confusion and panic in the West. Some of these alternative theories, it is claimed, state that Hitler and his wife, Eva Braun, survived and escaped from Berlin, with some claiming they went to South America. So that by now you would have heard me mention eyewitness accounts a few times. So I have to ask the question, who were these eyewitnesses? To start with, let us not forget that these so-called historians who are claiming eyewitness reports as evidence that Hitler died in the Führer bunker would also have us believe that Berlin at this time was in complete and utter chaos and that Berlin was hell on earth. So if we accept the fact that Berlin was in complete and utter chaos at this time as being the truth, and that the Allies were closing in on Berlin from all sides, which comprised of, from the east, Soviet forces, from the north and west, Polish, US, British, Canadian, and Soviet forces, from the South, Polish, Soviet, Romanian, Bulgarian, British, and Yugoslav forces. I find it difficult to believe that the Führer bunker, if it in fact did house Adolf Hitler, would not have been fiercely defended by Nazi Germany's most loyal and elite military forces. So if this was the case, and I also find it hard to believe that there are suddenly all these eyewitnesses who were able to get close enough to the Führer bunker in Berlin to see what had happened to Adolf Hitler, when surely the area all around the Führer bunker would have been seen some of the fiercest fighting going on in Berlin at that time. So therefore, it would have been surely been almost impossible to get near it. It should also be said, though, that there are people who like to be close to big historical events, and they will do or say anything so that they can be seen as being connected to these events. This may be one possible explanation as to why there are all these eyewitnesses suddenly appearing with these incredible stories and claims, particularly when you consider what was going on in Berlin at that time. So after World War II, Argentina became a safe haven for Nazi war criminals with explicit protection for Juan Perón. And so again, it is clear that Hitler would have been welcome there. For me, it is also not beyond the realms of possibility that Hitler had escaped Berlin when you consider that the practice of Nazis and fascists relocating from Italy and Germany to South America was not uncommon. And it is a fact many high-ranking Nazis and Nazi sympathizers fled to South America at the end of or near the end of World War II, as did many from Italy's fascist regime under Mussolini, which collapsed in 1943, and Nazi Germany at the end or near the end of World War II. In addition, in recent decades, both Chile and Argentina have had leaders who have been openly sympathetic to Nazi and fascist ideologies, such as General Pinochet of Chile and Juan Perón of Argentina. So I do not believe that it is fanciful to believe that Adolf Hitler, as a leader of Nazi Germany, should do the same. So this is the Warren's Mysterious World. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel. And also, if you want to, make sure you follow me on Instagram, X, and TikTok. So just to keep you updated with what's going on in the channel. Also, please make sure you subscribe to the Warren's Team Talk sports channel, where I talk about predominantly football. And every Saturday I do a show which starts at 2:30, where I keep you informed of all the scores as they occur in all the 3:00 kickoffs up and down the United Kingdom. So make sure you check those channels out. Excellent channels, even if I do say so myself. Also, let's move on now. It is also a fact that there are many people in South America who claim to have German or Italian ancestry going back before the end of World War II. And there are also large German-speaking communities in Chile and other parts of South America whose heritage goes back to around the time of World War II. Now, clearly, just because someone has German or Italian heritage, it does not mean they are Nazi or fascist sympathizers. But when you couple this with the large numbers of high-ranking German Nazis and fascists who fled from Italy and Germany and sought refuge in South American countries, particularly Chile and Argentina, you have to start to ask questions. Particularly when these countries were openly sympathetic to Nazi and fascist ideology, as Argentina's Juan Perón was, and this can be proven easily, particularly with Perón's comments with regards to the Nuremberg trials of Nazi war criminals between 1945 and 1946, of which he said, in Nuremberg at that time, something was taking place that I personally considered a disgrace and an unfortunate lesson for the future of humanity. I became certain that the Argentine people also considered the Nuremberg process as a disgrace, unworthy of the victors who behaved as if they hadn't been victorious. Now we realize that they, the Allies, deserved to lose the war. In Chile, there was a German-speaking colony called Colonia Dignidad, which was in fact a cult, which was run by a guy by the name of Paul Schaefer, who was a Nazi, and there were allegations of human rights abuses against members of Colonia Dignidad, including rape and sexual and physical abuse, including torture of young children. Paul Schaefer maintained a relationship with Pinochet's military dictatorship, which was in place between 1973 and 1990, and was involved in weapons smuggling and the torture and extrajudicial killings of political dissidents. After the end of Pinochet's government, increased public awareness of the activities of Colonia Dignidad following testimony by former victims led to the issuing of a warrant for Schaefer's arrest. Living underground for 8 years, he spent the last 5 years of his life in prison in Chile. The final period of German immigration to Argentina occurred between 1946 and 1950, when Perón ordered the creation of a rat line for prominent Nazis, collaborators, and other fascists from Europe, and it is alleged that he vigorously encouraged Nazis and fascist war criminals to make their home in Argentina. And the Argentines not only collaborated with existing rat lines, but set up additional rat lines running through Scandinavia, Switzerland, and Belgium. It was also claimed that in February 1946, Nazi smuggling became institutionalized in Perón's new government, and he appointed anthropologist Santiago Peralta as immigration commissioner and former Ribbentrop agent Ludwig Freuder as his intelligence chief, and then set up a rescue team of Secret Service agents and immigration advisors, many of whom were themselves European war criminals with Argentine citizenship and employment. Some examples of Nazis and collaborators who relocated to Argentina include Emil de Watoni, who arrived in May 1946 and worked on the Polki jet, which was a jet fighter aircraft. He faced charges of collaborationism after the liberation of France. Erich Priebke, who arrived in 1947, was a German mid-level SS commander in the SS police force, SIPO, of Nazi Germany. In 1996, he was convicted of war crimes in Italy for commanding the unit which was responsible for the Adriatine massacre in Rome on the 24th of March 1944, in which 335 Italian civilians were killed in retaliation for a partisan attack that killed 33 men of the German SS police regiment Bozen. Joseph Mengele, in 1949, was a German Schutzstaffel SS officer and physician during World War II. He was nicknamed the Angel of Death, in German Todesengel. He performed deadly experiments on prisoners at the Auschwitz II Birkenau concentration camp, where he was a member of the team of doctors who selected victims to be murdered in the gas chambers and was one of the doctors who administered the gas. Adolf Eichmann in 1950 was an officer of the Schutzstaffel SS and one of the major organizers of the Holocaust. He participated in the January 1942 Wannsee Conference, on which the implementation of the genocidal final solution to the Jewish question was planned. Following this, he was tasked by SS Obergruppenführer Reinhard Heydrich with the facilitating and managing the logistics involved in the mass deportation of millions of Jews to Nazi ghettos and Nazi extermination camps across German-occupied Europe. A Croatian priest named Krunoslav Draganovic, organizer of the San Hieronymo rat line, was authorized by Braun to assist Nazi operatives to come to Argentina and evade prosecution in Europe after World War II, in particular the Stasi, which was a fascist and ultra-nationalist organization active in Croatia between 1929 and 1945 and took control of Croatia from April 1941 after the Axis powers invaded Yugoslavia, which Croatia was part of at the time. Ante Pavelic became a security advisor of Braun after Braun was overthrown in 1955. Pavelic, fearing extradition to Yugoslavia, left for Francoist Spain in 1957. There are also many people who I've personally come across, South American people who I've come across, who are happy to openly express Nazi sympathetic views and yet claim these views are perfectly acceptable and not extreme. So, also, the United States of America launched Operation Paperclip, which took over 1,600 of Nazi Germany's top scientists, engineers, and technicians to America for employment after the end of World War II in Europe between 1945 and 1959. Some were former members and leaders of the Nazi Party. For example, Werner von Braun, who was head of NASA, who is alleged whilst in Nazi Germany would hang the slowest working Jews from the walls of his factory as a motivating tool. So it's clear that large numbers of high-ranking members of Germany's Nazi Party had escaped towards the end of World War II, and it has been claimed in the post-war years that the United States Federal Bureau of Investigations and Central Intelligence Agency investigated some of the reports that Hitler did not commit suicide at the end of World War II without lending them credence. The Soviet Union causing confusion in the West. Now, it's been alleged that the Soviet Union restricted the release of information about Hitler's death and released many conflicting reports on the subject. Historians have largely rejected these as part of a deliberate disinformation campaign by Joseph Stalin to sow confusion regarding Hitler's death. Soviet records allege that the burnt remains of Hitler and Braun were recovered, despite eyewitness accounts that they were almost completely reduced to ashes. However, this is in direct contradiction to claims made by other sources that the bodies of Hitler and Braun were exhumed by the Soviets, one of which is the British Mi-5. There is also a suggestion that in June 1945, the Soviets began seeding two contradictory narratives, which were that Hitler died by taking cyanide, that he had survived or that he had survived and fled to another country. This is in addition to the contradictions about what happened to Eva Braun and Hitler's bodies at the end of World War II. So therefore, we have so far have three different theories to explain what had happened to Hitler, which were that he'd committed suicide by cyanide poisoning, that he'd committed suicide by gunshot, and that last but not least, he had escaped Berlin to another country. So why would the Soviets have wanted to cause confusion in the West? This, in my opinion, the reasons. So the reasons for this, in my opinion, are many and varied, and I don't pretend to know what they all are. One, Stalin wanted to create confusion and panic in the West, as he may have had ideas of destabilizing the West and annexing Western Europe. Stalin wasn't as in control of the Soviet war machine as many people thought. For example, it may have been that people below him were trying to seek favor from Stalin by acting independently and trying to impress him by showing initiative. Stalin was very concerned that the Western Allies may decide to continue on to Moscow to remove him and impose a Western-friendly government. And by seeding this idea that Hitler had escaped, Berlin would stall them. So by now you would have heard me mention eyewitness accounts a few times. So I have to ask the question, who were these eyewitnesses? So when asked at the Potsdam Conference in July 1945 how Hitler had died, Stalin said he was either living in Spain or Argentina. So the question is, if Hitler did escape Berlin at the end of World War II, where could he have gone to disappear? Some of the options open to him at this time, in all likelihood, have included Argentina, Spain, Colombia, Chile, or somewhere else. In addition, in recent decades, both Chile and Argentina have had leaders who have been openly sympathetic to Nazi and fascist ideologies, such as General Pinochet of Chile and Juan Perón of Argentina. It should also be pointed out that the German Argentine community in Argentina is the third largest immigrant group in the country, after the ethnic Spanish and Italians. The German Argentine community predates Perón presidency and began during the political unrest related to the 19th century unification of Germany. Argentina was under the rule of a military government between 1943 and 1946, and then in 1946 Juan Perón took control, and his government had clear fascist tendency based on the Italian model. So I do not believe that it is fanciful to believe that Adolf Hitler, as leader of Nazi Germany, would also flee to South America. It is also a fact that both Chile under General Pinochet and Argentina under Juan Perón both employed death squads who would round up and disappear people who dared to raise their voice in opposition to the dictatorial rule and fascist regimes. In the countries of South America where this practice of disappearing people took place, groups of women were formed called the Mothers of Plaza de Mayo to campaign for their release. It is estimated that at least 30,000 people in Argentina alone were disappeared by their own government and were never seen or heard of again by their families. Just think about that. It is half a full Emirates Stadium, and these figures are replicated in other countries in South America. These women and families don't even have the privilege of knowing whether their family members are alive or dead, or where their missing family members are, so they can visit their graves if they have been killed. These groups are not just in Chile and Argentina, they are all over South America. It should be noted that at this time, Spain was under the rule of dictator Francisco Franco Bahamonde, and during World War II, the Spanish, although officially neutral, did not fight the war, but Spain did support the Axis nations of Germany and Italy and other ways for most of the war, and it had clear fascist policies. I've also been told by friends of mine who are Spanish speakers that Franco demanded that baby girls should have the name Maria included in their first name, and this is why you will find many Spanish women who have at least two first names, for example, Maria Claudia or Maria Ana or Maria Inez, for example. It is not difficult for me to imagine him being accepted. So it's not difficult for me to imagine him being accepted by Franco into Spain. So make sure you go and subscribe to this channel, Warren's Mysterious World. I do intend to try and upload a few more videos on this channel now. I know I haven't posted for a while, and I do apologise for that. But I will be trying to upload more in the future. You can also find me on Instagram, X, and also on TikTok. So make sure you go and follow me there. Also, make sure you subscribe to my sports stroke football channel, Warren's Team Talk. Every Saturday at 2:30, I do a live show on that channel where I look at all the football matches that are going on in the United Kingdom that kick off at 3:00. It's a great laugh, great entertainment, and great madness. A lot of madness and hilarity ensues. I'm sure you can imagine. So, continuing on with the show, it is clear that there were definitely places around the world that Hitler and his partner, Eva Braun, could have escaped Berlin to, that would have been happy to accept them. But the big question is, would it have been possible for them to do so? Seemingly, the answer to this question is yes. There are many routes that they could have taken, and given that so many Nazis and other fascists fled Europe toward the end of and after World War II, it must have been that these routes were highly effective in aiding the most sought-after fugitives on the planet to escape capture by the Allied forces. These routes were known as rat lines, and they mostly led to safe havens for the Nazis and fascists in the Americas, particularly in Argentina, though also in Paraguay, Colombia, Brazil, Uruguay, Mexico, Chile, Peru, Guatemala, Ecuador, and Bolivia, as well as the United States, Canada, Australia, Spain, and Switzerland. It has been claimed that there were countless numbers of Nazis and other war criminals who escaped during these rat lines, using these rat lines. There were two main routes, or rat lines as they were known. The first of these went from Germany to Spain, and the second one went from Germany to Rome, then to Genoa, and then finally to South America. It seems these two routes developed independently, but eventually came together, and it is claimed that both were supported by rogue elements in the Vatican, particularly an Austrian bishop and four Croatian clergy of the Catholic Church who sympathized with the Stasi. Starting in 1947, US intelligence utilized existing rat lines to move certain Nazi strategists and scientists. Despite the fact that it is accepted by the mainstream that Nazi Germany's leader, Adolf Hitler, died by suicide in 1945, in the late 1940s and 1950s, the US investigated claims that he had survived and fled to South America. I have to say that I find it extremely odd that the United States would spend all that time, money, and resources on investigating claims that he fled to South America if they knew that he had died at the end of World War II. It simply doesn't make any sense to me. And once again, it smacks of something being covered up. And this is not the first time that we have seen things like this with controversial figures and cases shrouded in mystery from history, such as the death of Princess Diana, possible assassination of JFK, the Jeffrey Epstein case, and Jack the Ripper. The list goes on and on and on. So in addition to these routes, was there any logistical support given to these individuals to escape? So we move on to this point. We're going to talk about Franco Spain again. As early as 1942, the Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Luigi Maglione, evidently at the behest of Pope Pius XII, contacted an ambassador of Argentina regarding that country's willingness to accept European Catholic immigrants in a timely manner, allowing them to live and work. It has been claimed by the American historian Michael Fire that Pope Pius XII was primarily focused on fighting communism and would prefer fascist war criminals sail to the New World rather than rot in prisoner of war camps. Allegedly, a German priest travelled to Argentina via Portugal with the intention of laying the groundwork for Catholic immigration, and it has been claimed that Catholic leaders accepted working with the Nazis in order to fight the common enemy of Bolshevism, and that by 1945 rat line activity centred in Francoist Spain to facilitate the escape of Nazis. By 1946, it is claimed that there are hundreds of war criminals in Spain, as well as thousands of former Nazis and fascists. So, an Austrian Catholic bishop by the name of Alois Hudal, a Nazi sympathizer, it has been claimed that was the first Catholic priest to dedicate himself to establishing roots. They claim that Adolf helped the Nazi fugitives with money and, more importantly, with false identity documents from the Vatican Refugee Organization, Pontificia Commissione di Assistenza. These Vatican papers were not full passports and thus were not enough to gain passage overseas. They were rather the first step in the paper trail, which they could use to obtain a displaced person passport from the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, which in turn could be used to apply for visas. According to statements collected by Austrian writer Gitta Sereni from a senior official of the Rome branch of the ICRC, Adolf would also use his position as a bishop to request papers from the ICRC made out according to his specifications. It is also a fact that at this time there was an active illicit trade in stolen and forged ICRC papers in Rome. So there was a small but influential network of Croatian priests, members of the Franciscan order, led by Father Krunoslav Draganovic, organized by the highly sophisticated San Girolamo Ratline, and Krunoslav Draganovic was authorized by Braun to assist Nazi operatives to come to Argentina and evade prosecution in Europe after World War II, in particularly the Stasi, which was a fascist and ultra-nationalistic organization active in Croatia between 1929 and 1945, took control of Croatia from April 1941. After that, Axis powers invaded Yugoslavia, which Croatia was a part of at the time. The Ratline initially focused on aiding members of the Croatian Stasi, including its leader, Ante Pavelić. Pavelić became a security advisor of Braun. After Braun was overthrown in 1955, Pavelić, fearing extradition to Yugoslavia, left for Francoist Spain in 1957. In Finland from 1945, a network of extreme right-wing Finns and Nazis organized to engage in armed struggle against the Soviet occupation, which never occurred. It smuggled out those who wanted to leave the country for Germany or Sweden. It created a system of safe houses in Finland under the cover of a company called Great Fishing Cooperative, with routes provided by a 50-70-man maritime transport organization. Though the safe house routes, the resistance movement transported Finnish Nazis and fascists, officers and intelligence personnel, Estonian and East Karelian refugees and German citizens out of the country. Hundreds of people were assisted in Sweden, including more than 100 German prisoners of war who had fled the Finns. Transport to Germany took place after the September 1944 break in German submarines, smuggling hundreds of people at the same time. The organization Odessa brought refugees from Germany to the Finnish coast, sometimes in several submarines at the same time. They were transported along the safe house route to Sweden and further from there. Hugh Trevor Roper's report in November 1945. So this was the first detailed investigation by Western powers, and after Dick White then head of counterintelligence in the British sector of Berlin, had their agent Hugh Trevor Roper investigate the matter to counter the alleged Soviet claims. His findings that Hitler and Braun had died by suicide in Berlin were written in a report in 1946 and published in a book the next year. Regarding the case, Trevor Roper reflected the desire to invent legends and fairy tales is greater than the love of the truth. In April 1947, 45% of Americans polled thought that Hitler was still alive. The National Police Gazette, 1951 to 1972. From 1951 to 1972, the National Police Gazette, an American tabloid-style magazine, ran a series of stories asserting Hitler's survival. Unproven allegations include that Hitler conceived children with Eva Braun around the late 1930s, that he was actually in prime physical health at the end of World War II, and that he fled to Antarctica or South America. Writing for the Gazette, William F. Heimlich claimed that the body found on Hitler's sofa did not match his blood type. So, following decades of other contradictory reports, in 1968, Soviet journalist Lev Bezymensky released his book, The Death of Adolf Hitler. It includes a purported Soviet autopsy report, which concludes that Hitler died by cyanide poisoning, despite no dissection of internal organs being recorded to confirm this, and eyewitness accounts to the contrary. Bezymensky claims that the autopsy reports were not released earlier in case someone might try to slip into the role of the Führer saved by a miracle. He also claimed that any gunshot would have been fired as a coup de grace, most likely by Gunshay. He later admitted that he was acting as a typical party propagandist and intended to lead the reader to the conclusion that a gunshot was a pipe dream or half an invention, that Hitler actually poisoned himself. The book's claims have been widely derided by Western historians. Richard J. Evans. In 2020, historian Richard J. Evans wrote, "For some on the far right, it seems inconceivable that Hitler would have died such a cowardly and ignominious death. In some cases, the proponents of Hitler's survival have strong links to the neo-Nazi scene or of hidden anti-Semitic beliefs, or involved with white supremacy organizations in the US that regard Hitler as an inspiration for their activities. Some fringe groups purveying various forms of alternative knowledge, such as occultists or UFO enthusiasts, seem to think that associating their beliefs with Hitler will gain them attention. So in some versions of the survival myth, Hitler's escape was achieved by occult means or involved his travelling to a secret Nazi flying saucer base beneath the Antarctic ice. To counter this argument, it has been claimed by some that Buzz Aldrin tweeted in 2016 that he'd seen the face of evil in Antarctica. I find this guy, Richard J. Evans' views extremely offensive. I think it's disgusting. And worse than that, it's extremely dangerous to suggest that some people who put forward the idea that Hitler survived World War II as having strong links to the neo-Nazi scene or of hidden anti-Semitic beliefs or involved with white supremacy organizations in the United States that regard Hitler as an inspiration for their activity for me, smacks of someone who wants to shut down legitimate discussion regarding what happened at the end of World War II and force their views on us in much the same way as Adolf Hitler and his colleagues tried to do during World War II. For me, it's a deliberate ploy to accuse those who have nothing more than a curiosity and a healthy interest on what goes on and has gone in the world in the past, presently, and what may happen in the future, and are not willing to simply accept the narrative of the world's power brokers simply because they told us that this is what it is or what it was, and expect us to simply accept what they tell us without asking questions of those holding some of the most distasteful views in society. I believe, if the truth be known, those who are making these accusations are guilty of the things that they accuse those who do question what is going on in the world themselves. And by making these highly offensive slurs, they are deflecting the focus of attention off themselves. I'd also like to remind everyone at this point that in May 1933, the Nazi Party of Germany ordered the public burning of books which were deemed as being incompatible or in opposition to the views of the party or un-German. And this statement is yet another example in the modern world of this intolerance of ideas which are deemed as being different to the accepted narrative and or offensive. For example, you can't say this, you can't say that. For example, this current in vogue cancel culture in our modern society. One only has to look at what has been going on in recent years with Sky Sports to see examples of this. Now, according to Ada Petrova and Peter Watson, Hugh Thomas disputed the dental remains which were allegedly found in his 1995 book, but also speculated that Hitler probably died in the bunker after being strangled by his valet, Heinz Linge. They noted that even Dr. Thomas admits that there is no evidence to support this theory. Ian Kershaw wrote that the theories of Hugh Thomas that Hitler was strangled by Linge and that the female body burned was not that of Eva Braun, who escaped from the bunker belonging in Fairyland. In 2017, French forensic pathologist Philippe Charlier confirmed that teeth on one of the jawbone fragments were in perfect agreement with an X-ray taken of Hitler in 1944. And he went on to say that there is no possible doubt. Our study proves that Hitler died in 1945 in Berlin. This investigation of the teeth by the French team, the results of which were reported in the European Journal of Internal Medicine in May 2018, found that the dental remains were definitely Hitler's teeth. Just give me a second while I have a sip of water. FBI documents declassified by the 1998 Nazi War Crimes Disclosure Act began to be released online by the early 2010s, contain a number of alleged sightings of Hitler in Europe, South America, and the United States, some of which claim that he changed his appearance by plastic surgery or by shaving off his toothbrush moustache. Now, just as I said about the eyewitness reports regarding the events that took place in Berlin at the end of World War II, and how there are some people who like being close to big historical events. For me, this could be a possible explanation for these alleged sightings of Hitler around Europe, Latin America, and the United States. For example, I remember seeing a guy talking on TV explaining how he had seen Hitler getting out of a U-boat on an Argentine beach in circa 1945. Now, the problem with that story is that U-boats aren't able to beach themselves. Now, although some notable individuals have speculated that Hitler could have survived, including General of the Army Dwight D. Eisenhower and Lieutenant John F. Kennedy in mid-1945, the documents state that the alleged sightings of Hitler could not be verified. Richard J. Evans notes that the FBI was obliged to document such claims no matter how erroneous or deranged they were, while American historian Donald McHale states that their files did not produce any credible indication of Hitler's survival. Now, in spite of the disinformation from Stalin's government and eyewitness discrepancies, the consensus of historians is that Hitler killed himself on the 30th of April, 1945, with some explaining the limited forensic evidence as due to the burning of the body to near ashes. There is also discrepancies regarding the following: whether or not Hitler and his partner Eva Braun escaped the Führer bunker, how Hitler and Braun committed suicide, and what actually happened to Hitler and Braun's bodies after their deaths. And now, at the end of 1945, Stalin ordered a second commission to investigate Hitler's death, in part to investigate rumours of Hitler's survival. On the 30th of May 1946, part of the skull was allegedly found in the crater where Hitler's remains had been exhumed. It is claimed that the skull had a bullet hole in it, which was apparently an exit wound. In 2009, on an episode of History's Mystery Quest, University of Connecticut archaeologist and bone specialist Nick Bellantoni claimed the skull fragment, which Soviet officials had believed to be Hitler's, and he stated that the bones seemed very thin for a male, and that the sutures where the skull plates came together seemed to correspond to someone under 40. A small piece detached from the skull was DNA tested, as was blood from Hitler's sofa. The skull was determined to be that of a woman, providing fodder for those holding views which do not fit in with the accepted narrative put forward by the mainstream, while the blood was confirmed to belong to a male. It has been claimed that the jawbone fragments and two dental bridges, which were found in May 1945, were shown to associates of Hitler's personal dentist, Hugo Blaschke, his assistant, Cathay Hausermann, and longtime dental technician, Fritz Eschmann. It is claimed that they confirmed that the dental remains were Hitler's and Braun's, as did Blaschke's in later statements. I would like to know, 1, when they were shown these remains; 2, whether they ascertained that whether they ascertained that they belonged to Hitler merely by looking at them, or whether they were scientifically tested, such as by DNA testing, for example, If they weren't, I would not take these claims seriously. So once again, guys, sorry to keep saying this. Can I please ask you to make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel, Warren's Mysterious World, previously known as Unveiling Realities. Also, make sure you follow me on Instagram, on X, and on TikTok. I am going to be uploading more content to this channel in the future. So make sure you keep your eyes on the channel, because there's lots of exciting content to come. Also, you'll find a playlist on the channel of shows that I did previously on Diesel Arsenal's YouTube channel. A great channel. Make sure you go and check him out. He's a big Arsenal fan and does a lot of great content, and he's a great guy. So make sure you check him out. So yeah, that's that. Also, make sure you follow me on Warren's Team Talk. It's a football stroke sports channel, and on YouTube. Every Saturday I do a show at 2:30 where I keep you up to date with what's going on in all the football scores as they happen around the United Kingdom in the 3:00 kickoff. So make sure you come and check that out. So moving on. Now, there are claims that Hitler and Braun did not commit suicide but escaped to Argentina. Now, Philippe Citron's claims. A declassified CIA document dated the 3rd of October 1955 reported claims made by Philippe Citron, who claimed to be a former German SS trooper, that Hitler was still alive and that he left Colombia for Argentina around January 1955. With the document, there was a photograph which allegedly shows Philippe Citron and a person who Citron claims was Hitler, and on the back of the photo was written Adolf Hitler and the year 1954. The report also states that neither the contact who reported his conversations with Citron nor the CIA station was in a position to give intelligent evaluation of the information. The station's chief superiors told him that enormous efforts should be expended on this matter with remote possibility that. Sorry, let me start that again. The station's chief superiors told him that enormous efforts could be expended on this matter with remote possibilities of establishing anything concrete, and the investigation was dropped. Now, there is a suggestion that when Adolf Hitler, if he did flee to South America, used the cover name of Schittelmeier. So there you go. I just thought I'd throw that in. But that is a suggestion. Now, the 2011 book, Grey Wolf, The Escape of Adolf Hitler, by British authors Simon Dunstan and Gerard Williams, and the 2014 docudrama film by Williams based on it, suggests that a number of U-boats took certain Nazis and Nazi loot to Argentina, where the Nazis were supported by future President Juan Braun, who with his wife Evita had been receiving money from the Nazis for some time. As reported, claims received by the FBI stated that Hitler allegedly arrived in Argentina, first staying at Hacienda San Ramon, east of San Carlos de Bariloche. He then moved to a Bavarian-style mansion and Inalarco, a remote and barely accessible spot at the northwest end of Nahuatl Lake, close to the Chilean border. It was claimed that Eva Braun supposedly left Hitler around 1954 and moved to Neckwen with their daughter Ursula Uschi, while Hitler allegedly died in February 1962. This book personally claims strongly that Bormann gave the US Office of Strategic Services stolen art and military secrets in exchange for Hitler's life. This theory of Hitler's flight to Argentina has been dismissed by historians including Guy Walters. He has described Dunstan and Williams' theory as rubbish, adding there is no substance to it all. It appeals to the deluded fantasies of conspiracy theorists and has no place whatsoever in historical research. Walters contended that it is simply impossible to believe that so many people could keep such grand-scale deception so quiet, and it says that no serious historian would give the story any credibility. In my opinion, we only need to look at the UFO-UAP mystery to know that this is complete and utter nonsense. Historian Richard Evans has many misgivings about the book and subsequent film. For example, he notes that the story about Ursula or Uschi is merely second-hand hearsay evidence without our identification or corroboration. Evans also notes that Dunstan and Williams made extensive use of a book, Hitler Murió in la Argentina by Manuel Montestero, which the author later admitted included made-up strange ramblings and speculation. Evan contends that Monasterio's book is not to be regarded as a reliable source. In the end, Evan dismisses the survival stories of Hitler as fantasies. McHale notes that the book repeats many claims made over the preceding decades, which are implied by remote association, stating that when one has no factual or otherwise reliable proof, one resorts to associating with something else or to using hearsay and other dubious evidence, including unnamed or unidentified sources. Now, I have to say, that house, that would be my idea of a dream house. I mean, look at it. It is absolutely stunning. And that location as well. Wow. That is wild. So on the History Channel series Hunting Hitler, ran between 2015 and 2018, investigators including Gerard Williams cite declassified documents and interview witnesses which allegedly indicate that Hitler escaped from Germany and travelled to South America by U-boat, and that he and other Nazis then allegedly plotted a Fourth Reich. Contradictorily, in 2017, the series was praised by the tabloid-style National Police Gazette, which historically was a supporter of the fringe theory, while calling on Russia to allow Hitler's jawbone remains to be DNA tested. After being featured on the series, an expert on World War II, author James Holland, explained, "I was very careful never to mention on film that I thought either Hitler or Bormann escaped, because they didn't." So now let's have a little chat about what I think about all of this. So do I believe that this case is a perfect example? So I do believe that this case is a perfect example as to why history is so important. And in my opinion, it should be taught compulsory in schools. If Hitler had been around today, or someone who had similar views, Nigel Farage, and personality traits to Hitler, and rose to power as he had in Germany, a powerful country which had the resources to fulfill this person's ambitions, I personally think it would almost certainly result in the destruction of the planet, because we now have weapons which are more than capable of destroying our civilization. Did he escape Berlin at the end of World War II? I personally think, in the balance of probability, that he may have done, especially when you consider all the conflicting information and evidence of what happened to Hitler. For example, did he shoot himself? Did he take a cyanide pill? The skull, which was claimed to be his, but turned out to be that of a woman. Is it possible all the conflicting information came as a result of Soviet or some other powers' disinformation? It may have done, but irrespective of this, I do not believe there is enough. I do believe that there is enough confusion and conflicting information to reopen the investigation into what actually happened at the end of World War II. I do not think it is beyond the realms of possibility that all the conflicting stories that came out regarding what happened to Hitler at the end of World War II may have originated from the Nazi propaganda machine. The reason for this is that it may have been a desperate attempt by the Nazi, excuse me a sec. I do think it may have been a desperate attempt by the Nazi regime to give its followers hope that they could come back and have another go, so to speak, or it could have been a desperate attempt to rally the troops and motivate them to continue fighting. I'm not saying that it did, but I definitely think it is possible. In addition, despite the fact that it is accepted by many in the mainstream that Nazi Germany's leader Adolf Hitler died by suicide in 1945, in the late 1940s and 50s, the US investigated claims that he survived and fled to South America. I have to say that I find it extremely odd that the United States would spend all that time, money, and resources on investigating claims that he had fled to South America if they knew that he had died at the end of World War II. It simply just doesn't make any sense to me. And once again, it smacks of something being covered up. And this is not the first time that we've seen things like this when we've been looking at controversial figures or cases from history. And in these shows that I've done previously on Diesel Arsenal channel, or what I intend to do now on this channel, we've seen it with the death of Princess Diana, the Jeffrey Epstein case, and also with Jack the Ripper. The list just goes on and on and on. In my opinion, this guy is without doubt the evilest man ever to walk the surface of this planet. And the way that he was able to gain power and stay in power with the assistance of an incredible propaganda machine and manipulating the circumstances that the majority of Germans found themselves living in on a daily basis and then execute his plan is truly terrifying. There are many reasons, in my opinion, as to why history should be taught in schools compulsorily, and I think you will find it difficult to find a stronger reason than this. For those who argue that this could never happen again, I beg to differ. Look how the far-right parties have recently performed in elections in the West, and how they've been able to manipulate the population by spreading xenophobic bile and lies using the mass media and whipping up people's fears and prejudice. Perfect example of this is the Brexit thing. Just imagine the damage and destruction that this guy or someone similar to him, Farage, could unleash if they were in power today, particularly if he was in power in one of the strongest countries on the planet. In closing, for me, one of the greatest, if not the greatest moments in sport came at the end of the 1936 Berlin Olympics, when arguably the greatest sportsman in history, Jesse Owens, won 4 gold medals in the 100, 200, 100 and 200 meters, the long jump, and the 4x100 meters relay at the Games. And through his success, he was able to humiliate Adolf Hitler and the whole ideology that the Nazi regime was built upon. Apparently, on the 1st of August 1936, Nazi Germany's leader, Adolf Hitler, shook hands with the German victors only and then left the stadium. And after this, International Olympic Committee President Henry de Latour insisted that Hitler greet every medalist on our tour. And so Hitler opted for the latter and skipped all further medal presentations. So the channel that you've been watching this show on is Warren's Team Talk. Warren's Mysterious World. It's a YouTube channel. And you can also find me on Instagram, on X, and on TikTok. The links for these will be in the description of the video. And I will be putting out a lot more content soon. I'm intending to do a show about Graham Hancock and crop circles. And if any of you watching this have got ideas about shows that you'd like me to do in the future, please just put it in the description or contact me through Instagram and I'll be happy to add them to my file. So also, please make sure you come and check out my football YouTube channel, Warren's Team Talk. Every Saturday I do a show at 2:30 where I look at all the all the football matches that kick off at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. And that starts at 2:30. And I'll keep you up to date with all the scores as they happen in those games. So it's always really exciting, great fun, and a lot of excitement and drama on that channel. So make sure you come and check it out. So listen, thanks ever so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Please put your comments in the comment section of the video. Let me know what you think happened and whether you think he escaped and why or how, and whether he died in the bunker, as the mainstream interpretation of events would have us believe. So, but thank you again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe. Please make sure you share the content around. Help me to build up this channel. And also make sure you follow me on Instagram, X, and on TikTok. So thanks everyone for watching. Take care of yourselves. And in today's show, we've looked at who was Adolf Hitler. We've looked at how Hitler came to power, how Britain and France declared war on Germany, the mainstream theory about Hitler and Ava Braun marry and then allegedly commit suicide, alternative theories about what happened to Hitler starting to appear, Stalin, Soviet Union's role in the rise of alternative theories about what happened, where could have Hitler escaped to, what help they could have received to escape Berlin, and some reactions to alternative theories. And finally, as always, I gave you what my thoughts were about all of this. So there you go. Thanks ever so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and thanks ever so much for watching. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.